To invite a couple of other people that I would like to say a few words. Stephen, are you available, mate? No. That's okay, fully understand. You've heard that Angus has been working with Andrew in the last few years on his album, which I'm going to say a few other words, but I'm not going to go on now. So what I'd like to do is invite Angus up, because he has asked if he could say a few words. And with the friendship that's grown between Angus and Andrew, especially in this creative force that they shared, it's very important. I've known just a little bit of... I introduced Andrew to Angus. My words were on the drive down for Andrew to meet Angus was, you'll either punch him in the face or you'll work with him and be best mates. I think you've worked out what happened. So here's Angus, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Terence. Oh, wow. So Terence and I toured together, and we got to make some great music together. We've even shared we shared hotel rooms together. And when Terence brought Andy over, you rocked up in the ute. You were in the ute, and those, thank you for inviting me tonight, by the way. It's wonderful to be here. I don't really know anyone. I've got to know a couple recently through this process. But I'm a very polarising personality. As Terence said, people either love me or hate me. And it seems that Andy was the same. Is that correct? But although I think most people just loved him. Certainly I grew to love the man. And when I've been producing music as a studio owner for 30 years, as an engineer for 30 years, and when someone comes to you and brings their personal creative songwriting, their songs, it's actually a real privilege to be able to partner with them, because that's what I do. I partner with the artist and to try and present their ideas and their music the best way we can, depending on budget, obviously. And what I will just say right now is that I've been doing this for 30 years, and this album that I know you're just going to love and enjoy, Too Old to Be Famous. He's such a great songwriter, such a great lyricist. I remember the drummer, Phil Gordian, who's toured the world. He's won awards, worked with producers all over the world, and he said every time he get an Andy, he played all the drums on the album. Every time he got a song to play, he said always get lost in the story, in Andy's stories, the stories he told, and he's a great storyteller. But in my 30 years of doing this album is by far my greatest work to date, and we spared no expense with this album. When Andy first came, he had this little sequencer box he had, and he loved it so much he had two of them. He had a spare just in case there was a problem. And he'd come with his ideas, and when Terence introduced him, he said, let's just start by just record his ideas, what he wants to do, and just see how it goes. And straight away there was some very unique, stops and accents and things that Andy used to do in his music, which made it quite distinctive and quite, special. Anyway, we recorded the first song, and it was great. We put his vocal down, recorded his guitars and stuff, and I said to him, what do you reckon we could do this and try that? Let's put live drums on it. And we went through this process, and at the end of, it's got to be close to 4 years now. At the end of 4 years, some of the songs on the album have been redone 3 times. So we actually would pair the whole song back, and if any of you heard some of the early versions of some of the songs, Jane, were you sent some of those early versions of some of the songs?
Yes.
When you hear them, you'll hear the differences. We did an EP first, a 4-track EP, which was mastered, and I burnt some copies, and he'd give that. Does anyone have a copy of that original 4-track EP, by the way?
It's got number 1.
Yeah.
So yes, okay. So that original 4-track EP. Look, I don't want to waffle on here or not. Is anyone finding this interesting? Is it okay?
Let's keep going, Angus.
But at the end of that 4-track EP, we had it mastered, and you know, we're always growing. Anyone that's a creative, and I'm sure there's a lot of creatives here because you're, you know, friends are related to Andy. You're always improving and always developing and always trying something new, and yes, and Andy was like that, and so he obviously spoke a lot about his the landscaping. He loved doing the landscaping, and he spoke about how he used to be an art teacher, and you know, we got to spend a lot of great time. We spent hundreds of hours together. It was just wonderful. But when we finished that first 4-track EP, then he decided he'd like to do an album. We decided we'll keep going and do an album. And so we've ended up with 14 original songs, produced to the highest standards, I must say, using some of the best musicians in Australia and America. You know, Andy, you know, he was a perfectionist. He always wanted the best. And he would just, if I'd make a suggestion, look, we should get this fiddle player, or we should get this piano accordion player from Sydney, or we should get this bass player from Brisbane, or, you know, who's toured internationally. And one thing I've learnt with music is the better musicians you put on your CD, the better result you get. And that's a testament to Andy, because he spared no expense to get the best musicians and the creme of the crop on this album. And you'll hear it. When you hear this album, it's going to blow you away. And Andy and I, we had a lot of plans. We were talking about promoting the album. We were talking about winning awards with it. We ended up taking the album into a country vein, and the reason we did that, his melodies and his musical approach, it was sort of lent that way. And the first 4-track EP, those of you that got it, you know, it wasn't country at all. It had saxophone on it, and, you know, it was sort of his own, you know, it was his own sort of eclectic style. And I ended up getting some work through a friend of mine, doing some work on the album. Michael Flanders is a producer in Nashville, and he ended up, and he sort of was giving us pointers and tips.
That's Nev's brother.
Yeah, Nev Flanders brothers, that's right, that's right.
Simpsons, for those of you who get it.
I'm going to wrap up soon, sorry. But he made the decision, he suggested that the album needed some focus, and when you're producing an album, you've always got to have some continuity, and so we made the decision to turn it into a country album, and it's a modern country album, and I believe with marketing and promotion, I actually believe this is an award-winning album.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. You know, there's two types of vocalists. You've got the amazing vocalists like Bing Crosby and, you know, Frank Sinatra and you know, Adele, and then you've got the character vocalists, Terence, of course, yes, and the character vocalists like Bob Dylan. And Andy was a storyteller, and the stories he tells on this album, in hindsight, are actually quite poignant, and you'll see that, you'll realise that. But I hope that we can still do something, and I know you're up there enjoying this occasion, Andy, and I love you, buddy. Thank you for coming, and, you know, and for entrusting me with your music. It was just a real privilege, and I can definitely say to you, mate, that this is my best work in 30 years. And I thank you for entrusting me with your music and with your songs. And I'm just so excited for the world to hear this album, buddy. To hear your music, to hear your voice, to get caught up in the stories and the melodies and the rhythms. Just incredible. I miss you, mate. I'm sorry you weren't here to see this finished product, because Chelsea's done a fantastic job on the artwork. It really has. It's just stunning, beautiful. And, you know, that photo on the front, I took that photo on my iPhone, sitting in the car. We would talk, because what we do is we go and do some work, and then we go and listen in the car on the car stereo. That's what you do in studios, you know. And he was just sort of, we were talking, and he was looking at it, and I said, Andy, that's a good photo. So I took the photo, and you know, I took a few of them, and there, I think that's just, you can just see, you know, the intelligence, you can see the creativity. I think it's a great photo. It just captures the journey. You know, you can see that he was also an outdoors man in that photo. He does, you know, he's not in a suit. You can see that he was a man that worked with his hands. Just brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, look, thank you.
Thanks, Angus. Yeah, very special words coming from Angus there, and for those that obviously experienced the versions of the songs with Andrew, lucky enough to sit in the car in that seat and hear it and watch him pound the steering wheel. That is so special for Angus to share his emotions and feelings and his creativity, and I know how fussy Angus is, so the relationship that came together out of that is just awesome. So thank you, Angus, and thank you that you made the effort to come today.
Good on you.